Beyond Survival is the official podcast of Waymaker Institute. Our desire is to equip you as a follower of Jesus to thrive. Each episode reveals how the gospel impacts the entire human experience for the advancement of God's kingdom. Ultimately, Jesus' promise of abundant life means we are meant to go beyond survival. So, let's jump in with today's episode.
Hey, welcome to the Beyond Survival podcast. This is the official podcast of Waymaker Institute, and we have the privilege of inviting guests from all walks of life and professions to talk about, what it means to maybe live in this survival mentality as followers of Jesus, or maybe even practically or physically in their life or emotionally, but then talk about the abundant life that Jesus promises, and we want to help equip you to do that. And today, we actually have one of my friends, Jorshe. And Jorshe, we met many years ago.
Yep.
At this point.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that?
We met in 2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Right. And who would have known that we would both be in ministry one day?
Yeah.
And serving in the local church, leading in the local church, and we've developed a friendship, and I'm a big fan of you and your church.
I appreciate that.
And so I guess let's just start off. Who is Jorshe? Who is Jorshe?
I am a believer, love the Lord. Got saved when I was in high school, and so I've been walking with the Lord since then. Felt the call to ministry in college and really been stepping into that. Husband, got a wonderful wife.
How many years?
We've been married for 9 years.
9 years. Oh, you're coming up on year 10.
Next year's 10.
You better get ready.
I've been planning. I've been saving.
Come on.
I want to leave the country.
Really?
I got 3 little girls, and that's my plan. Like, my wife's like, we can't leave the country. We got little kids. I'm like, 10 years, we're doing it. We're leaving the country. 5 years, we went to Charleston, which was awesome, in South Carolina. It was so cool. Yeah. We only had 2 kids then, so I've been talking about it for a while now. 10 years. We're dropping the kids off at her parents' house, and we're leaving the country somewhere. Yes. I don't know where.
You don't know where yet?
Don't know where.
Sophia, where should he go?
So Marcus and I we're planning a trip to London
for
his 30th.
You haven't told me.
But it's like a year in the making. Like, it's for his 30th next year. Okay. So like the UK is where we want to go.
Okay.
Nice.
So I recommend, I've never been, so how can I recommend it? But through the planning process, I recommend it.
Okay.
So yeah, UK.
I actually hate Europe.
Okay. Well, great.
Well, I have reasons for hating Europe.
Okay. Why?
So my family, we traveled to India a lot growing up, and we always had a stop in like some country in Europe. And some of my least favorite things were stopping in Europe. I remember as a kid stopping in Paris. And you think Paris, that's so cool. I hate Paris because as a little kid, I had a stuffed gorilla, and they thought there were drugs in it, so they tore my stuffed gorilla up.
No.
Yeah. No lie.
They tore your stuffed gorilla.
I'm a little kid with a stuffed gorilla. They tore it up.
Man.
And it's just like unforgivable to me. Yeah.
No.
I was like, French people, come on. And then I was in.
So you took that and you said all French people.
All French people.
Don't like
all of France, all of Paris. Don't like you.
No.
Don't. Everyone's like, I can't wait to go see Paris. I was like, never on my list.
I think we need to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think this should be counseling.
You need to work through that.
Yeah, we need.
Yeah. I'd rather go to like Tokyo or something like.
Okay.
Something like cool.
Yeah. Okay, that's so cool.
And then we spent a bunch of time in London for similar reasons, and some of our layovers were longer, and it just was always like raining and dreary and depressing. So it's not for me. You guys can love it.
Yeah. No, that's okay. That's okay.
Tell me about your ministry.
Yeah, so I am executive pastor at Passion Community Church. I've been there for a while now. I've been there for 12-ish years.
Yeah.
I was 19 years old when I first started serving at the church.
Yeah.
I was in college. One of my best friends was leading worship there, and he tricked me to come to the church. He's like, hey, can you help me out and play drums for me? And they were just starting. The church basically relaunched the lead pastor, Mike Kirby. He just got there. So it was a small church, 30 people. And so they were starting from scratch, basically.
Yeah.
And so I played 1 week for him, and he asked me every week to come, and I've been there ever since.
Ever since.
And so I've done a lot of different things, led a lot of different ministries there, from college ministry, small group ministry, into now as executive pastor. I oversee all of our ministry development and really trying to push just the effectiveness of how we do ministry. How can we be better? How can we grow? I help launch almost all of our new ministries.
That's so cool.
And what that looks like. So I like to, call myself like the guy in the background that's just doing this. Yeah. And my other leaders are the ones that are like the face, kind of getting a lot of the
equipping the people.
That's what it is. And so it's been cool. It's been an incredible journey. And you and I met at Liberty, and when I was in college, I thought I was going to go straight from college right into full-time ministry, and the Lord had a different plan, and I learned so much along the way that makes me 10 times more successful in what He's called me to do now than if I skipped this step. Yeah. And I grew as an individual, as a leader, and so it's been awesome to kind of learn, develop, and just pour into the church.
Yeah. Even hearing you, the crazy parallels between our stories, right? Yeah. Like both of us had a call into ministry. Both of us, as college students, were part of a church. Yeah. Like Casey and I started coming here when we were engaged, right? Yeah. Stayed faithful, serving, attending, and then all of a sudden wind up on staff. Yeah. Obviously at Liberty, learning about like just organization and leadership and how both of us have kind of, as the churches have grown, basically we have grown, our families have grown, our leadership has, there's like I don't know if it's about you, but sometimes it's hard to distinguish like what a part of my growth and as a leader, as a follower of Jesus, as a husband and a father is separate from the church. It's like
it's all connected.
Yeah, it's all connected. Yeah. So that's there's just a lot of cool parallel. I don't have as good of a beard as you, but
I like to consider myself like a beard professor or like prophet, maybe.
Oh, okay.
maybe.
I like it. Maybe. I like it.
I'm just saying, since I have grown my beard, every single one of the pastors at my church has a beard now.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. If our lead pastor was holding out for the longest, but he finally did it, and the amount of compliments he gets on his beard.
There it is.
I take credit. Every time they say, "Oh, your beard looks good," I said, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
Tell us about your extended family, because we were talking earlier, most of your family is back in India.
Yep, most of my family is back in India. So my parents got divorced when I was in high school. I actually just got saved in my sophomore year of high school, and then my parents ended up getting divorced. My dad walked out on us, and since then really haven't had much communication with them. So in America, it's been my mom, my sister, and I. My sister is 5 years older than me. She lives in Atlanta, Georgia. Okay. And it was just my mom and I that were Christians in our immediate family. And then past that, like all of my family in India, there's only two family members that are Christians past just my mom and I. And so most of them are practicing Hindus. Some on my dad's side are Catholics. Okay. But again, all of them in India. Yeah. So right now it's just me and my sister.
Yeah, wow.
Which is kind of wild.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So okay, let's jump in, because you've got so much perspective and on a lot of stuff. So if we just kind of leave it broad, when you think about like survival mentality in the faith, so a follower of Jesus that just kind of gets into survival mentality. What do you think of? Like, what do you see? What comes to mind?
Yeah, I say there's two things. One, I see just trying to make it, right? Just focused, short-term vision, focused on the thing right in front of you, and you just can't see. You have a limited perspective. You can't see. And the thought I kept having was, man, it just feels like wilderness mindset, right? Like the Israelites there in the wilderness, and God just delivered them from slavery. And literally the presence of God is leading them in a cloud and a fire and leading them to the promised land. That's what's happening, but they're complaining and they can't see any of it, and they're just caught up in being too hungry or being uncomfortable or this one circumstance or the other circumstance that they can't see, right? And I feel like, survivor's mentality, it's the circumstances in life that cloud our vision to see fully and give us a short-sighted perspective, and we miss what God's doing, and we're just focused on the small things and trying to overcome the small things. And that's kind of like,
that's so good. We were talking about this before the episode, but I literally am thinking about Walter Virgil's episode, because he talked about when there's a lack of being able to see something, to see a vision and to have faith in that, then it forces us just into the here and the now, the concrete, and we're in just survival. Yeah. And I love the unity there, like how you articulated that. What would you see? Sometimes, okay, what does that look like though? Like, so if you met somebody or a family or even a church, what would you see physically that would be an indication that they are in that kind of survival mentality in their faith?
Yeah. A lot of times I think situations and circumstances trigger that, like whether that's just a difficult season of life, like hardships, whether that's, at work or at home, like I think that triggers that, or tragedy or loss even, like can trigger you into that survival mindset. And so I would say, the triggers can help identify someone in their faith of, like, are they just trying to make it, or are they actually experiencing the life that Jesus had for them? And then I'd also say that, individually, like in the way that they're interacting, there's almost this frantic spirit and a lack of like rest. That is just when you are surviving, it's really hard to rest, because you are just, and rest, like, rest gets thrown around a lot, especially now, like, and like people are like, oh, to rest I need, this, or I need certain time off, or I need this thing. And a lot of it is like, your survivor's mentality. It affects your emotional health, and that is such an inhibitor to true rest. And so I think that you can tangibly see like that frantic lack of rest in individuals when they're in it.
That's so good.
Well, I want to know, because I don't know you super well, so I'm going to like rewind it back. You're a pastor now, but you mentioned that you didn't necessarily grow up in a Christian home. Your mother became a Christian. How did you go from your upbringing and, your dad leaving and those different things to then building a ministry, a marriage, a family, a life of faith? How did you how did that happen?
It was, and this is not like a Sunday school answer, but man, it was the providence of God. Like it was God's active hand in my life. Like the fact that I talked to people that I knew in high school, and even people that went to the same church as me when I started going to church, and they find out I'm a pastor, and they're just like, what? They're like, is that what
That's the best kind though, right?
They're like, is that what you wanted to do? And I was like, definitely not. I was like, I had one objective in life. That was just to make money. Like, that's it.
Come on.
There's one objective. And it's because my family was like poor, right? And because we're so poor, and like I didn't have a lot of opportunity, I missed a ton of opportunities. I was like, I just don't want that for my family, and I don't want that for myself. Like my one objective is to make enough money that I don't have to live like I lived growing up, and that was the like sole driving factor in my life. So even as a Christian, like it didn't matter. Like I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go to law school and I'm gonna do this thing, right? And so coming to Liberty was really a stroke of God's providence, because I didn't want to really come here. I actually came to play drums at Liberty. I played on Liberty's drum line my freshman year, because because I loved music, and like that's what I wanted to do. I really wanted to play on JMU's drum line, which would have been a terrible decision, because I would have been a frat boy. Like, that's what they would have played into that mentality, but God opened this door and closed every other door. So I came and I played on Liberty's drum line, and I hated it. And it was because, the time commitment was just absurd. We're practicing like 14 hours a day, and I'm just like, this is too much. This is too much. But through there, like I remember my freshman year establishing relationships, and it was there that I felt like the Lord, in high school, I remember there's like, moments that you have in life where you feel like your life moves down a different path. And in high school, I remember, God essentially calling me out of my mess to start living for him. And then in college, the moment of God calling me to say that I got work for you to do. And there was a a mentor that I had that basically said if money wasn't an objective, like an object in life, it wasn't the thing that you were worried about, what would the thing that you would do? Which is like a simple question, but it was really pointed towards me, and I said I'd do ministry because something I'm passionate about. And from there, I felt like God was working and softening my heart towards like trust. Like the word that is echoed in my life over and over and over again is just trust me. And every new chapter of my life, it's like God is reminding me again and again and again. He's like, look, I've been faithful in your history. I'm going to continue to be faithful. Will you trust me? Yeah. Stepping into ministry, or the call to even study ministry was an object of trust. Like it was an element of just trusting God. Leaving Liberty to go full time at Passion was the same thing. Like our church, we hadn't reached a place where we were able to really be successful to where we are now. There was a lot of instability there, but our lead pastor was like, I think this is the right time to make this move. But it is a risk, and he was very honest with me and talking to it with me. And, my wife and I, we prayed through it for a while, and we felt like the Lord was saying the same thing. Like, here's another opportunity. Like, are you going to trust me? So I think that from not growing up in a Christian home to getting saved in high school, I feel like God has been actively present in my life, shaping and directing my path and teaching me and reminding me that all along the way that he's worth it and he's worthy of our trust, and that I could trust him.
So good. Sophia, do you know anything about trust?
Not a thing. I wish I didn't. Trust it's such a concept. It's a virtuous concept, right? But it's, in my opinion, one of the most difficult pruning and refining things that God can do in your life, because we don't naturally want, at least I definitely don't naturally trust.
No.
But it's vital. It's a vital part of the Christian walk and faith.
I don't want to pretend like I'm great at trusting, right? Like that's not it,
no,
right?
No.
And that's why I feel like God is sometimes just beating me over the head with it, because he's like, look, don't forget. You can trust me. Don't forget. And it's like constant. Always. Don't forget. You can trust me. I got you. And so it is. Sometimes we don't hear the message the first time, and so God will gently remind us over and over and over again.
Well, and even when we do know the message, that's why he would have to tell the Israelites to keep remembering.
Yes.
Like, hey, do this festival, throw this party, at this meal or whatever. Because you got to altar. Yeah, you got to remember, because you're going to forget.
Yep, exactly.
That I am trustworthy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. Jorshe, can you talk about a season in your life where you felt like you were in that kind of survival mode or survival mentality?
Yeah. I was thinking about just thinking through that. I think that more often than not, we could all admit to being in a survival mentality at some point in our Christian walk.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times we don't want to, because we feel ashamed about it, right? There's a sense of like guilt associated with like, oh, something's off, or I'm not doing it right, I'm not thriving, right?
Yep.
And so people don't want to talk about it. And so like that's why, like, if I'm being honest, like right now, I feel like I am in this survivor's mentality. And it's not there's so many nuances to that. In survivor's mentality, it could be like, oh, are you like financially just trying to survive, right? Are you, physically just trying to survive? Like I would say, like emotionally, that's where I'm at. You know, my mom passed away 3 weeks ago, and it is raw. Yeah, like the wounds are very real, and grief is real, and just working through that and processing through that, and every day is trying to emotionally survive through the grief of trying to figure out like what does it look like to move forward. And it's my story is like probably the two biggest traumatic events in my life would be like one, my dad walking out on me, and then two, now my mom dying, which leaves me as an orphan essentially. And I have an incredible wife, incredible family, and then my wife's family, they love me. Awesome, which is fantastic. But there's almost like this emptiness that feels like, man, I don't have like my mom was like my closest family member. Like
Yeah.
my mom and I were very, very close. And so I was like, man, I don't have parents. I don't have like family to like love me. And like, that's like there for me in that
Yeah.
level. And so processing and working through that is challenging and trying to figure out, okay, what does it look like? Like, how do I get from where I'm at now to back to like health and what that looks like?
Well, I just want to, you would never say this, but I do want to, I think it'd be cool to just say that we had scheduled to record this episode 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I remember getting the phone call from you.
Yeah.
And we were supposed to schedule, and you said your mom had just passed away. And then you said, hey, I'll be there, but I may be a little bit, shaken. I'm like, Jorshe, like, you're not coming in to record this episode today, but like just your, like, in the midst of that, like your like commitment and like your faithfulness to go through it, because you said you were, and in the midst of everything, I don't know, it's just, it's just really crazy.
Yeah.
So
stupid also.
Well, yeah. Well, I wasn't gonna say that.
In the moment, everything was so new. Like I hadn't felt everything, but like hindsight now, like that was not wise. Well, and I'm thankful for you to say no, because I don't know, who knows what would happen.
Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows what would happen.
So it's still raw, and in the grieving process, there's no formula, there's no timeline. And you're probably just entering into it, like, I mean, literally. And so when you talk about like surviving, like emotionally, can you just unpack like what that looks like on a typical day? For you. So,
man, it's crazy. Like I'm a pastor, and this is like the real, like authentic, genuine thing that I want to share. Like, man, there's surviving like emotionally, like there's so many different feelings that you're experiencing in grief. Some of them are like happy, like joyful feelings of like my mom is in heaven with Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, that's an incredible thing, right? Like I'm so happy. My mom suffered a lot this last year. So in March, she broke her tailbone. She slipped and broke her tailbone. And from that, my mom was like, I wouldn't say like crazy active, but like mom could move and walk and like take care. She was independent, right? She went from that to being bedridden and having nurses having to do everything for her. She couldn't even go to the bathroom herself, right? Like before she went into the hospital and was admitted, I was like going to her house and taking care of her. And so all of that suffering gone, and her being in heaven, healed, whole. My mom loved to worshiping Jesus, like face to face. Like I'm so happy for that, right? But then at the same time, like there's so many feelings of loneliness and like pain and like feelings of loss, feelings of anger. Like, man, it's hard. Like I preach about every 3 weeks at my church. I push my preaching, like we push my preaching out, because I told my lead pastor, I was like, man, I need time to wrestle through my relationship with God, because I'm angry. And like that's a real thing. And I don't think I'm a bad Christian. And I know I'm not a bad Christian because I'm angry. I'm angry at God. God, how could you give me like this hand at life, right? Like, man, there's people that have incredible families, incredible parents. Like, not only did you not give me a father, which, I finally, like, I got peace with, right? But now you took away, like, my mom. And, like, my mom is, like, the only person that's, like, I'm so proud of the ministry that you're doing. I'm so proud of the work that you're doing. Like, she was, like, my biggest cheerleader. Like, she saw that. I was like, God, how could you take that away from me? Like, you essentially left me, like, as an orphan. Like, why would you do that to me? Like, how horrible is that? And it's just anger. Like, I'm working through it, and man, I was telling our pastors yesterday, like, I was spending some time with the Lord yesterday, and I was like pushing in, and I was trying, and I was like, felt like I was just running up against the wall, and I just got angry about it. I was like, I've been here before, God. Like, it's not my first time in your presence. I've been here before, and I feel like I can't get through. And I'm like, and so it's just like all of this stuff is just transpiring in my head. And later that night, yesterday, I was listening to some worship music, and I felt like there's a song that I was listening to, and one of the girls was singing, and she was just saying, I'm gonna sit here in your presence until my heart screams yes, surrender to whatever you want. And there's just like this tenacity that it just I felt like the Lord was just saying, like, this is a process. Like your survivor's mentality and your healing, like, there's a process. I don't want to slap a Band-Aid on that. Like, I don't want you to have scar tissue. I want you to be stronger because of this. And so it's going to take a while. And you don't have to worry about the end result. The only thing that, my father was telling me to do is just meet with me. Just be with me.
Yeah, and what you just said, there's a profoundness because, when we read the Psalms, David, in one verse he would, be raising his fists at God or expressing really strong emotions of anger, and then the next one he'd say, "But God is," and your response was just that, like, which people need. They need to see that. I'm struggling. In my relationship with God, I'm angry. I feel like I hit a wall. And then it was like so seamless. Then you just were talking about, but this is who God is. And the church needs to see that more. And part of the reason why, I was hesitant of how much, to share about, stuff with my mom, but, part of the reason why, and my wife was, encouraging me to just be used by the Lord and be used by the Holy Spirit, part of the reason why I want to share is because, man, we want to put off our most polished self forth in everything. It's a business proposal, right? Let's make sure everything looks good. And that's what we want to do in church all the time. And when we aren't that self and that person's not really who we are, that's when we're not honest with who we are, with ourselves or with others. I feel like that's when we get stuck in survivor's mentality. It's okay to be and here's what I believe is it's okay to be in survivor's mentality. Like you said it, David, man, he was there. He had that survivor's mentality, that wilderness mindset all over in his life. But the reason why David's one of my favorite characters, and the reason why, God says he's a man after my own heart, I believe is because he was never stuck. He didn't just stay where he was at. There was movement and motion towards getting back with God. And I think that the reason why I want to just be real about it is to let people know that until we're honest with ourselves and honest with other people, we'll never be able to get out of it.
So good. It's listening to you kind of talk about your mom, and I know that you're just in the beginning of this journey, but it's very similar to what my husband and I just walked through in the last year. His mom got really sick, lung cancer, but she was super healthy, completely unexpected. My husband's also very close to his mother, best friends. And it was brutal. It's still, it's been a year and it is still I will start crying. It's very raw and very fresh. And it's that concept of we have so much joy because she is out of pain and she's with Jesus and she was obsessed with Jesus, upset. Her obsession was just, it was so beautiful. And so it's that joy that she's there, but then also that pain. And I think it is important for people. I know for me, after, I remember the day after her funeral, I was done, emotionally, mentally. It's funny. I talk about I came off of this hot season of I was preaching and I was doing all these ministry things, and then it was just complete silence, and I vegged out. I talk about Gilmore Girls, but that's what I did.
We weren't talking about Gilmore Girls. No, we weren't.
Brett might start watching Gilmore Girls for everyone.
we can cut that out.
We'll cut that out. But I vegged out. I was I don't have any emotional capacity in me, so I'm gonna stay in my house and lay on the couch and watch Gilmore Girls because I'm devastated and angry and don't want to deal with it. And it I don't know. It's just hearing that is okay. Obviously, if I was still doing that, I would want somebody to come and get me. But it's not you going through a season of anger and wrestling and maybe even stepping away from your ministries or leadership actually can help produce greater fruit later. It's not going to be a hindrance to it. I don't know. What are your thoughts about, I mean, not that you can predict this, but what do you think is critical for you, but also for other people that are grieving right now, so that a year from now, 2 years from now, you're not, losing your mind? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, my mom passed 3 weeks ago. Our lead pastor's mom died last year. And so last year I was essentially in his shoes now, like, helping him, walking through it with him, giving him the space he needed. And so now, like, the roles are essentially reversed, where he's doing the same thing for me, and he's giving me the space that I need to kind of walk through, which I'm thankful for. But man, I think something that, one, I want to grieve well, and I think what that looks like for me and for I think a lot of people is directly dealing with it instead of allowing it to, and you can't stop it from coming up, right? It comes up in different things, but like there's so many times where we just like push it aside or stuff it under the rug, or like we just don't want to deal with it. We don't want to deal with it, and it's almost more explosive and more difficult to deal with in indirect ways. But like directly dealing with it, identifying like, who am I really angry at? Am I really angry at my kids, or am I really angry at God, right? Like, because like we redirect anger, and I redirect anger right now.
Man.
Right now I redirect anger a lot. Like that's like my thing. Like I'm not patient in general, but I'm even less patient, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
I have 3 daughters that are under 5, like 5 and under, right?
What?
And which is crazy. And and so one, I want to grieve well. And I want to grieve in an honest way that's not like, I'm fine, like, don't talk to me, I'm fine, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with me, right? Also, because I have 3 daughters, right? Like, my youngest daughter, she's a year. She doesn't understand. My other 2 daughters, she's 4, and my other daughter's going to be 6 in December. Like, they know exactly what's happened. Like, they ask tons of questions. And, like, to not be transparent in the way that you grieve, like, I feel like I do them a disservice, because then they wouldn't know what to do with their feelings. Like, what am I supposed to do with my feelings? And like walking my oldest daughter through redirecting her anger and her frustration, because there was one night, man, this had me all choked up crying. Like, there's one night she's just being like mean to everyone, like just angry and mean to everyone. I'm like, what? I was like, all right, you go to bed early. And so, and I was just frustrated, right, with her. And I'm sitting with her, and I put her down, and I'm like looking at her, and she's like furious, fuming. I'm like, what's up with you today? I've never seen you this angry at like the smallest things. She's like, I'm just so angry. I was like, why? She's like, I don't know. I was like, okay. I was like, and I said, do you think maybe you're not angry at all these little things that don't make sense, and maybe there's something bigger that you're angry at? She said, maybe. I was like, okay, like, what do you think are you maybe angry? Like, she called my mom Gigi. Are you maybe angry about Gigi, about her dying? And she said, yes. And then this is the thing that kills me. And I was like, okay. And I said, that's great, like, that you said that. I was like, figuring out what you're really angry about is an awesome step. Like, that's awesome. And like, for me, like, I'm walking her through what I need to do. Like, figuring out what I'm really angry about is like awesome. And then I said, well, why don't you talk about it? Why don't you share me? What are you most upset about? And like, it's like she's like this little girl. She's got all these emotions like all bottled up. She takes a deep breath, and she said, my mom, she passed on Monday. She was in the hospital before then, and they weren't letting any kids in. And her birthday was that Sunday beforehand, and I was supposed to take my kids in. We do this whole thing for my mom for her birthday. And on Saturday, she got back from the hospital into the home that she was in, with the nursing home, with the help that she was getting. And my daughter's like, can I come see her this time? And I was like, no, she just got in there. She let her settle. I was like, next time, I promise you, I'll take you with me. And then so she said, my daughter, she's like, what are you most upset about? She's like, you promised me the next time you take me to go see Gigi, but there is no next time anymore, and now I'll never see her again. And as she said it, it's like she exhaled, and she just starts crying. And, I'm not good at recognizing all cries, but like this cry was different than any other cry I've heard. It was just like this deep, wounded cry. And it was it was good for her. She needed that. And I think that, you know, for me, it's just like walking myself through the same thing. Like, what am I really angry about, right? Like, what am I really angry about? Like, I'm not really angry about, like, my kids making a mess out of my house. I'm angry at God for allowing this thing to happen. I'm angry at God for, like, my mom retired and moved to Lynchburg. This was supposed to be, like, my mom, like, she worked 2 jobs when I was growing up to provide for my family. Like, and so she just worked so hard always. This was supposed to be her, like, season of enjoying life that she's never had, where she's with her grandbabies and we're doing all this fun stuff together. And she moved in the summer in July. In March she broke her tailbone. There was really no season of her enjoying. And I'm angry that, like, he robbed her of this season to just be with her grandchildren, to be with me, and, like, to enjoy life. Like, she was so excited about doing ministry in Lynchburg. Like, my mom, she's fiery, right? She's like, so many people came to my mom's funeral from, like, all around just to talk about, like, her impact and like people calling her, like, their spiritual mother, right? And I was just like, it was so cool to see, and so many people came for that. And, like, I'm angry that, like, he robbed that from her, and I'm angry that, like, my kids, like, they don't have, like, their grandmother, like, from that, like, you know, the entire, like, you know, my, like, Indian culture, like, I have nobody to, like, teach it to them except, like, me. And it's just, like, frustrating to me that, like, part of who my kids are, like, it's like harder to, like, explain to them who they are, where they come from, what that means. And so, like, just like my daughter, like, identifying, like, what I'm upset about, and then, like, talking about, like, okay, I'm actually angry at God. Okay, well, what am I angry at? Like, what are the things that hurt the most? And then just, like, being able to, like, vocalize it, right?
Yep, there
like,
it is.
God is a big God. He is a big God, and if you tell God you're angry at him because of A, B, and C, whatever, he's not going to be like, I couldn't take it, right? Like, that's too much, right? Like, that's not too much.
Yeah, we're not going to hurt his feelings.
No, it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt his feelings. In fact, what that's going to do is, like, he wants it. He wants to receive, like, those feelings and those hurt, and it allows us, it's almost like a step into deeper intimacy with God.
Well, no one in Scripture who wrestled with God walked away different. Or didn't walk away different.
No, exactly.
Like, they were changed. They were marked. And then in some ways it even helped to inform what was next.
And like, my questions of why, like, God's never going to tell me why. Like, right, maybe I'll get to heaven and I'll be able to see, right? He's not going to be like, this is why this happened. This is why you had to experience so much loss and suffering in your life, right? Like, I'll never get those answers to it. But I need to trust.
There it is again.
I need to trust. And, like, I don't right now. Like, I don't.
Yes.
This morning I woke up, I took a shower, and I prayed a prayer, and it's something, it's almost like a mantra, like, that I'm going to keep saying over and over again. Like, God, I know that you're good, and I know that your hand is working in my life, and it's in my best interest, even if I can't see it. I don't believe that right now, but I said it, and I'm going to keep saying it over and over again, and I know that my heart will follow and will believe those words, and I don't know why, but I need to trust that, you know, it was the right time for my mom to come home. It was in her best interest. It was the best thing for her. It was the best thing for me. Like, the suffering, the loss that I've experienced in life, it's not pointless. God has greater purpose for what that is. And so, man, grieving to me is just like being honest and real with my Father, and saying, like, God, this is why I'm upset and hurt. Like, you left me alone.
There are so many people who live in probably shame and guilt, or they've walked away completely simply because of the fact that they experienced something difficult and they never articulated it. Like, they feel guilty or shame because they feel that. And then so it's like, well, I'm a bad Christian, or, you know, people are going to think ill of me, or especially if I'm someone in leadership and influence, right? And so it begins to just fester and just almost like spread like a disease internally, or they just say like, I'm not going to vocalize or shed light on this, and so then I'm just going to veer off and go a really dark path. And there was something so profound and like holy and beautiful in just what you did, like that people needed to see and hear. And I think you've probably given permission to people.
Yeah.
Like right now that will listen to this, that you've given permission for them to be able to start that journey of grieving and then eventually healing. Right. Yeah. And so I just want to thank you for that before we even continue on, which I don't even know where we would go from.
No, I appreciate that. And that's my hope, is that especially like leadership, right? There's so many like pastors and leaders in the church, when they struggle alone. Mm-hmm. And the reason they struggle alone is because they don't feel like they can share what they're going through without being judged, or without their congregation or the people in their church being like, are we even following this dude? Yeah. Like, I don't want people to follow me because I am this polished, refined Christian. Mm-hmm. I want people to follow me because I love Jesus, right? Like, that's it. I love Jesus, and I'm running after him. Yep. When in good seasons of life and in bad seasons of life, like that's why I want people to follow me.
And that's how you lead too, man. I know how you do things in ministry, and I think that's the culture that you've fostered in your church too. I just see that so evident. The times I've been able to work with you guys or just get to know you, I know that is so evident. And so it's not just, I just want to tell people, I guess, that it's not just what you're saying, but I've actually seen it on display. So, I don't even know how to do this like rightfully, but to kind of shift gears, but I do want to talk about you as a father. Yeah. You have 3 beautiful young girls. Yeah. I love seeing pictures online. Yeah. They're gorgeous. How has your fathering of them changed based on your own experience with your father?
Yeah, it was probably one of my greatest fears in life was being a father, because I didn't have a good father. Wow. And I didn't know how to be a father. Mm-hmm. And it was something that I was just so uncertain of. And, man, being a father, like, I joke about this, and my wife knows this, and she thinks it's funny, but like, I joke about this, like, being a husband, it changed my life, and I love that. Being a father, it changed my life on such an intrinsic level that I can't even, like, fully put weight behind it. And the best way I can articulate it is this. Corey Asbury, he was doing an interview, a guy who wrote Reckless Love, he's doing an interview about the whole album and the song, and he's doing this interview with his son, and he says this, and it's just like my favorite thing ever. He said, I didn't know how to be a son of God until I became a father. And that's it to me. Like, that's it to me, right? I was so afraid of being a father because I thought I'd be a terrible dad, because I knew what a terrible dad was, and my plan was basically to do the opposite. Yeah. What I didn't realize was being a good father is not about just modeling like good earthly fathers. It's about understanding the heart of our Father and modeling that. And that's me. That's like what I'm trying to do. And so when I became a father, like I like, it unpacked a level of relationship with God that I was just like, oh, I understand love. I understand your love on another level that I didn't understand before. That I said I understood, but I just didn't. It just unlocked another level. And then in understanding like the Father's heart for me, like I was able to just like demonstrate it for my kids in a way, and like looking for opportunities to love them and praise them and, give them grace when they deserve punishment, like, and teach them about God. And so it's been an incredible journey. And I got little kids, so it's just, as little kids, like, it's my youngest kid is like, we taught her how to sleep through the night, we teach her how to eat food, like it's like that level stuff. But now with my my older kids are, my middle kid, my wife was telling me yesterday when I'm a fire chaplain at the Lynchburg Fire Department. I was at a award ceremony doing the prayer for their ceremony, and my wife was telling me that my middle daughter's 4 years old. She said, Mom, what do I do when I wake up and all my family's dead?
4 years old?
4 years old. Mom, what do I do when I wake up and all my family's dead? Like, where do I go? What do I do? And my mom's like, and my wife Megan's like most likely that won't ever happen, right? Like, I'm not gonna say they'll never, but like that is like not a situation that you have to worry about, right? And it's like my kids are getting older now, so it's more than just, I'm not trying to keep my kids alive. Now I'm like, trying to really shepherd their hearts, right? Like when they're young, like that's the goal, right? You want to keep them alive, right? Like that's it. And if you're keeping them alive, you're winning as a parent. You're doing a good job, right?
Every day's a win.
Yeah, exactly. But like now they're at the age like 4 and almost 6. It's at the age of like, I want to help mold their hearts, right?
Yeah.
I want to help make their hearts fertile ground for seeds of the gospel to be planted, right? And everything that I do as a parent, like, I want to be so intentional that everything I do as a parent, like, one day will connect to something that, I believe that, God is, when we talk about, like, strategy and tacticians, like, God's the greatest tactician, right? Like, he's thinking millions of moves ahead, millions of moves ahead. The way that everything, like, lays to get to where we're at, the way that things overlay, he knows. And so, like, on a smaller level, I want to be so intentional and strategic with my children in the way that I inject opportunities for the gospel to be planted and take root in their hearts. Because they're at that point now, right?
Yeah.
They're at that point now where they're asking questions and they want to know and they want to understand. Yeah. And so, like, that, like, to me, it's about understanding God's heart for me as father, which maybe I can experience on a more tangible level because I don't have a earthly father. That is like my only father relationship, right? So it's real to me. It's very apparent to me, like understanding that and then just figuring out how can I model and reflect that towards my kids? And then just owning my mistakes, right? I apologize to my kids all the time.
There it is. That's it.
I do. Like, I'm like, you know what? And like my oldest kid, she's super smart, and she will now like come to me and she'll say, when she does something wrong, I'm sorry that I did this. And I'm like, okay. And she's like, but I didn't like that you did this thing. Oh. And she will address flaws in me that require apology. Yeah. And she's like, I didn't like that, the way that you said this to me, it hurt my feelings. And I was just like, I'm sorry. I said, I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I never want to hurt your feelings. I'm sorry that I hurt your feelings. I was like, I love you. I was frustrated because of A, B, and C. And like being willing to apologize and just like not being prideful, right? Like, it's okay, stuff, right? Man. Like, it's okay. Just own your stuff, right? Like, I messed up, right? Yeah. And teaching her, like, if I can humble myself to apologize to a 6-year-old, she should like humble herself to apologize to her parents and towards anyone else that she wrongs. And so
that's so good. Sophia, I'm sorry to say, but Isaiah's going to do that to you. I know. I can feel it right now.
I'm just going to, I've felt like this toddler phase is so brutal. Like, he's, headbutting me. Yeah. But would I rather him headbutt me or say, Mommy, that hurt my feelings?
Yeah.
I'm just going to soak in the headbutts a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
A little bit longer.
Appreciate that.
Yeah,
Mom, I don't think that's what Jesus would do.
Yes.
He's
is.
He's definitely going to do that.
Yeah, he is.
Yes.
So it's going to be a fun time.
Mom, I was reading Sermon on the Mount. And he talked about being,
Like, well, look, Jesus talks about that. Close your Bible.
And I'm still in process.
Man.
So I want to hear, being a mom, what have you learned as a follower of Jesus and about God by becoming a mom?
I feel like I have learned that I have to deal with my trauma and my stuff in order, not that I have to be perfect, but that I have to have this stuff addressed in order to raise healthy kids. I don't think not that I haven't had like revelation of God's love, but it's been hard. It's been very refining. And if anything, it's not that I've necessarily seen, oh, now that I have kids, I understand God's love better. It's more that I've seen, wow, I have the potential to, I don't want to say mess my kids up, but if Isaiah has exposed me, my son, his name is Isaiah. He has exposed me, even he can't even really talk yet, and he has exposed all of my stuff, which has forced me to get help and to get healing, which I am now so grateful for, because when he is 6, 7, 8, and we are not just like trying to keep him alive, all of that hard work will be worth it. So I'm thankful that it's being dealt with now rather than later.
So good.
And I think that's critical, like not just living in survival mode as a parent, but wanting to thrive and show that to your kids. And it comes through taking care of yourself first.
I think there, not to get too like psychological, I haven't done any studies on this, but I just feel like, I don't know, maybe it's just discernment, but that might be why there are parents who have so much like bitterness towards their kids, or so much like there's like almost a wall built up, because it's built into God's kingdom that there's supposed to be that thing that helps to sanctify and like and expose to your word, and yet we're like, we don't like that, and so now we redirect, as you were saying, some of those emotions that we don't like towards our kids, which then can create barriers. And I wonder if that's where that begins to happen.
I mean, no joke, being a parent is hard.
It
is challenging, and it takes effort to be. I think it's easy to be a bad parent, like personally, but to be like a good parent where you're actively involved and invested, it is really challenging and hard. But I love what you said. I think that's so smart and wise for you, because ultimately hurt people are going to hurt people, and if you don't deal with your own hurt, even no matter how much you love your kids, like you will, as a byproduct of your own hurt and trauma, you will like end up hurting them. And so I think that's so cool to see that you're working through and processing through and dealing with that.
That's good. Well, I have one final question that I specifically love to ask those that are leading the local church. But before we do that, I did want to just stop and acknowledge something. And so, I know obviously this episode brought up a lot of real and raw emotions for you, and I don't want to take that for granted. And also, I want to honor you for being willing to do that. I don't want to make light of it. I don't want to just like brush by it or take advantage of it. And so I just wanted to say personally, thank you, as your friend and as a co-laborer in the ministry. Thanks for being willing to do that. And, I am believing and know that it will be powerful for people that hear it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Appreciate it.
So the final question is, you work in, church ministry. You pastor and you shepherd a lot of people. And not only that, but you get to know other churches and other pastors, and you probably got a grasp of the landscape of what's happening. I'm curious, when you look at the landscape of the church, maybe here locally or even globally, do you have a lot of hope when it comes to the local church?
That's a
softball, right?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. Do I have a lot of hope when it comes to the local church? I mean, I would say that there's multiple ways to answer that. Ultimately, yes, we have to have hope in the local church because it's biblical, right? Like the local church, the reason why I love the church is it is God's, it's not perfect, right? We're not perfect. Like church as a whole is God's chosen method for reaching the world. So I have hope in the fact that that's it, right? That's the be all end all. In what church is going to look like in the future, I don't know if it will look exactly in the way that it looks now. I think that, even just like navigating through COVID and pandemic, it was interesting to see churches having to close, and just almost like a refining of churches that could make it.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of unhealthy churches that were limping along, and they're like, fine, close the doors.
Yeah.
Right? Where they weren't reaching or doing effective ministry, they were just existing. The church is not meant to just exist, and I think that that's kind of what we've seen for a while. So I have hope in the end result, and I just don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I think that God is going to raise up leaders to shepherd and lead his bride, maybe in different and unexpected ways of what that looks like. Whether that's more localized, like, smaller pockets of community, and like, you see kind of how church is done internationally in places like China, or like, in the Middle East or in India, like it's maybe it's done a little bit differently, and you can kind of see maybe that's the way the American church will go. I think that more and more people will start leaving the church, and because specifically you kind of see it now, like people are leaving the church, right? The trending people are leaving the church, and a lot of it is because church is just shifting to what it was, like that kind of experience that you got in the 90s of church. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. So you have some churches that are trying to just kind of recreate that. But nobody truly wants that, right? Nobody truly wants that. And so then you have other churches that are trying to just be obedient to the way that God is leading, and those are the churches that are a little bit more successful. And so I do believe that we're going to shift and see more of a shift. And I personally think that what we'll see is just more and more emphasis on building up of other leaders or other laborers, instead of it just being like, hey, you got this one guy, right? And he is
the guy.
He's the guy. He does everything. He's the ministry. We experience everything through this one guy. I think we're going to see more and more pockets of many men and women using their God-given giftings to build up the church. In a greater reach.
I like it.
What that looks like.
And I'll give the rest of my life to that.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Right? Like, and I guess that's why I like you, man, because that's the heart of the Institute.
Yeah.
It's like we believe in the local church. We believe the local church should be led with high-capacity, high-character leaders that are going to equip the saints, and we want to leave the future church in better hands.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And I love the again, the realness of your answer to say, well, I have faith in the church, I hope in the church, because it is the bride of Christ. Like that, that's God chose. But I also know it's probably going to change a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's foolish to just assume that it's just going to stay the same.
Yeah.
Like, it would be like a Fortune 500 company, like, paying attention to, like, trends and being like, you know what, we're going to just stay the same and still be successful.
There you go.
Nobody's doing that, right? Nobody's doing that. They're paying attention to what's happening and adjusting and shifting and what that looks like. And so I definitely think that building, developing, discipling, like, it is what we need to be investing our time in as church leaders.
Yep.
Because that is that's universal.
Yeah.
It's timeless, right? That's what I'd say.
Timeless.
It's timeless.
That's so good.
Discipleship, making disciples will never go out. It will never
go out of style.
It will never go out of style. It will never be irrelevant.
Yeah.
It will always be the thing.
Come on.
It will always be the thing. And so, man, that's what I want to be about. I want to be about building up leaders and developing them. And I want to be their biggest cheerleaders as they thrive and succeed.
Let's go. And on that note, man, we're going to end. So, again, you're the man. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Just really value what you're doing and taking out time to be here with us in the midst of all that you're grappling with. And so you're a great husband, you're a great father, you're a great pastor. And so we are as you said, we're cheerleading you on, man.
Yeah,
so
appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
No, I appreciate it. I'm thankful for our friendship and partnership with Waymaker. Like, I love you guys. Love what you guys are doing, and love that. I love how you say it. We're on the same team, right? It's a big city. It's a big community, right? We're on the same team, trying to reach this place for Jesus.
Yeah, so good. Hey, I believe that you probably have someone, if you're listening or watching this, that is experiencing like loss and grief. And I'm serious, like, to hear Jorshe's story, I think would be so powerful. So I'd love for you to share that, send it with someone that is walking through that. And even maybe you're a parent yourself, or parents, you have your parent friend group or whatnot. I just think some of the stuff that he talked about in regards to being a parent is so encouraging and challenging. So thanks for tuning in. And this is the end of this episode of Beyond Survival.
Thank you so much for listening to the Beyond Survival podcast. We hope these conversations have helped you lean into the abundant life Jesus has for you. We're taking a break for the holidays, and we'll be back after the new year. In the meantime, be sure to listen back on some episodes you may have missed. And if you haven't already, follow and subscribe to Waymaker Institute on Instagram and YouTube to stay up to date on what's next for the Beyond Survival podcast.